A little beggar found the millionaire's unlimited credit card. What she asked for in return changed his whole life. On the busy streets of the city, where the scent of freshly brewed coffee mixed with the lingering haze of smog, a young girl navigated her way carefully through the crowd. Diana, a girl barely 10 with tangled hair and clothes that had seen better days, moved with wide, watchful eyes, always alert. She called the streets home. Her only family was her father, and every day was a challenge to get by. As she weaved between people in a hurry, a glint on the ground caught her eye. Lying on the sidewalk was a credit card. With shaky hands, she picked it up, her eyes widening as she read the name printed on the card: Aaron Warren. Even Diana, young as she was, recognized the name as one of the wealthiest in town. For a brief moment, she felt a pull of temptation. That card could mean a meal, a clean outfit, or maybe even a safe place to sleep. But as fast as the thought came, she brushed it aside. Her father had always taught her that honesty was their most valuable possession, and she wasn't about to break that rule. With a firm resolve, Diana slipped the card into the pocket of her worn jacket and started toward the spot where she knew her father would be waiting. The sun was setting, casting warm hues of orange and pink across the sky, a striking contrast to the tough life on the streets. As she walked, Diana couldn't help but think about the card and all it symbolized. It wasn't just a bit of plastic. It represented a life of comfort, safety, and ease, everything she and her father had dreamed of, but never known. At last, she reached the alley where her father usually waited. There he was, sitting against a brick wall, a look of relief crossing his face as she approached. "Dad," Diana said, her voice a mix of excitement and worry. Diana's eyes sparkled as she held something in her hand. Her father, a middle-aged man with early signs of age etched into his face, looked at her, his gaze both curious and gentle. "What did you find, sweetheart?" She carefully pulled a card from her pocket and held it out to him. As soon as her father saw the name on it, his face shifted, and he addressed her in a steady, low voice. "You know we have to return this, right?" Without hesitation, Diana nodded. "I know, Dad." "But how will we find who it belongs to?" he wondered, standing up slowly, every movement reflecting his exhaustion. He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder and said, "We'll figure it out. There's always a way when you do the right thing." With the card tucked safely away, the two left the alley, unaware of how that small piece of plastic would soon turn their world upside down. Unseen forces were setting things in motion, starting with one girl's simple choice to do what was right. A chilly dawn breeze slipped through the deserted streets, hinting at the change ahead. Diana woke, huddled close to her father, sheltering from the wind. Despite the cold and hunger gnawing at her, her determination was stronger. "Dad," she murmured, gently shaking his shoulder, "we have to give the card back, today." Her father, Peter, opened his eyes slowly, the exhaustion of countless sleepless nights heavy on him. But, seeing his daughter's resolve, a flicker of pride renewed his strength. "You're right, sweetie," he said, managing to sit up. "But we need some food first." Diana's stomach growled in agreement, but she nodded, knowing her dad had gone without food just to make sure she ate. That unspoken sacrifice only deepened her resolve to do what was right. Together, they set out into the city, now stirring awake. The early sunlight bounced off the skyscrapers, painting a picture of hope amid the city's unforgiving reality. As they walked, Peter noticed a nearby newsstand. He approached it and asked if he could glance over a newspaper. The vendor, sensing Peter's need, handed him a page. One headline caught his eye. "Millionaire Aaron Warren announces charity event in the city center." "Diana," he called, I think we might know where to find the card's owner." She joined him, her face lighting up with excitement and nervousness. "Really, Dad? How will we get there?" He explained the article, and together they made a plan to visit the charity event that very afternoon at a fancy hotel downtown. They knew this was their chance to return the card, but as the day wore on, hunger gnawed at them more fiercely. Diana noticed her father beginning to falter as they walked, clearly weakened from lack of food. "Dad," she said, her voice shaky, "we could use the card just once to buy some food. No one would know." Peter paused, looking down at his daughter, his gaze filled with both empathy and resolve. He kneeled in front of her, ignoring the ache in his knees, and held her small hands. "Diana," he said softly, but with conviction, "I know you're hungry. I feel it too. But our integrity, our honesty, that's the one thing that truly belongs to us. We can't give it up, not even for a bite to eat." Diana's eyes welled with tears, but she nodded, grasping the weight of her father's words. "And besides," Peter added with a tired smile, "imagine the look on Mr. Warren's face when we hand him his card back, untouched. That will mean more than any meal." Diana threw her arms around him, hugging him tightly. In that moment, on the bustling street, they shared a bond of love and mutual respect that no amount of money could buy. With renewed resolve, they continued toward the hotel. The afternoon sun bathed them, and though their stomachs were empty, their hearts were full of hope and dignity. As they approached the towering hotel, Diana squeezed her father's hand. "Whatever happens," she said, her voice carrying a wisdom beyond her years, "we're doing the right thing." Peter nodded, his heart swelling with pride and love. Together, they walked forward toward an encounter that would forever change their lives. Little did they know that fate had surprises waiting they could never have imagined. The Golden Hotel stood grandly in the city's heart, its glass doors catching the last light of the day. Diana and Peter stopped at the entrance, feeling small in the face of the opulence around them. "Ready, sweetheart?" Peter asked, gently squeezing her hand. Diana nodded, mustering all her courage. Together, they pushed through the revolving doors and stepped into a world straight out of a dream. The hotel lobby was the pinnacle of luxury, with crystal chandeliers casting golden light across the polished marble floors and richly woven Persian rugs. Men in sharp tailored suits and women adorned with sparkling jewelry mingled throughout the room, all appearing to overlook the arrival of the two newcomers. Peter made his way to the front desk, where a young woman, polished in her uniform, regarded them with a mix of surprise and suspicion. "Excuse me, ma'am," Peter began, his voice steady yet respectful. "We're here to see Mr. Aaron Warren. We've come to return something of his." The receptionist gave them a once-over, skepticism evident in her gaze. "I'm sorry, but Mr. Warren is currently in a private meeting. I can't disturb him." Noticing her father's rising frustration, Diana took a step forward. "Please," she said softly but resolutely. "It's important. We found his credit card and want to return it." The mention of the credit card piqued the receptionist's curiosity, and she looked at them with renewed interest. She seemed on the verge of responding when a commanding voice cut through the air behind them. "What's going on here?" Turning around, Diana and Peter found themselves facing a tall, sharply dressed young man, his face both striking and marked with a hint of arrogance. "Nathan Warren," he announced, studying them with a suspicious gaze. "I'm Aaron Warren's son. What's this about a credit card?" As he spoke, Diana sensed the initial disbelief in his expression turn quickly to outright distrust. "Are you expecting me to buy this story?" he scoffed, his tone laced with scorn. "Obviously, you tried to use the card and, when that didn't work, decided to hand it over to avoid getting in trouble." Diana's eyes stung with tears at the accusation. "That's not true," she protested. We didn't use it. We just want to do the right thing." Nathan let out a bitter laugh. "The right thing? People like you don't even know what that means. You probably had every intention of using it, and something went wrong. Who knows how many other cards you've stolen?" The accusation struck deeply, but despite their weariness and hunger, Diana and Peter stood their ground with quiet dignity. "Young man," Peter said, keeping his voice calm but firm, "I get why you'd be wary, but I promise you, our intentions are honest. If I could just speak with your father—" "My father doesn't waste time on con artists," Nathan cut him off. Then, with a nod to the receptionist, he ordered, "Call security." "Escort them out of the hotel and make sure they don't come back," Nathan ordered. Diana's heart plummeted. After coming so far and struggling to resist hunger and temptation, here they were, treated like criminals. Tears welled up, not from shame or fear, but from sheer frustration at the unfairness of it all. Peter saw his daughter's pain and made a swift decision. He pulled a credit card from his pocket, raising it in his hand. "Check this card," he said, his voice calm and steady. "It's untouched, unused. Look up the records. We haven't spent a cent." His words caught Nathan off guard, and for a second he seemed uncertain. But Nathan's pride won out. "Security will handle that," he replied coldly, nodding toward the approaching guards. "But I want them both gone now." As the guards led them to the exit, Diana glanced back, her eyes meeting Nathan's. Her gaze held a blend of hurt, disappointment, and, oddly, compassion. For a fleeting moment, Nathan looked as though he caught a glimpse of the truth in her eyes. Then the moment passed. The hotel doors closed behind Diana and Peter, leaving them once again on the cold sidewalk. Diana leaned her head against her father's arm and whispered, "I'm sorry, Dad. Maybe we should have just used the card for a meal." Peter hugged her, feeling her shiver, whether from the cold or her emotions. "No, sweetheart," he said gently but firmly. "We did the right thing. Having a clear conscience is worth more than any meal." As they walked away, neither of them noticed the figure watching from one of the hotel's upper windows. Aaron Warren, the true owner of the card, had seen it all unfold. Aaron stayed by the window long after Diana and Peter had vanished. His mind was spinning with conflicting thoughts, admiration for their integrity despite their struggles, and shame over his son's behavior. With resolve, he left his suite and headed to the lobby, where he found Nathan laughing with guests at the charity event, as if nothing had happened. "Nathan," Aaron called out, his tone steady yet unmistakably firm, "we need to talk now." The young man excused himself from his group and followed his father to a quiet spot in the lobby. His smile faded as he noticed the gravity in Aaron's face. "What's going on, Dad?" he asked, attempting to keep a casual tone. Aaron's gaze stayed steady. "I saw what went down with those two people, the girl and her father." Nathan's face tightened, though he tried to stay composed. "Oh, that. I was just protecting our interests," he said. "They could have been scammers or—" "Stop," Aaron cut in, his voice thick with disappointment. "They came here to return my credit card. A card with a practically unlimited limit, I might add. They could have charged thousands without me knowing. But instead, they chose to bring it back." Nathan's eyes fell as the weight of his actions began to settle on him. "I didn't know," he stammered. "Exactly," Aaron replied. "You didn't know because you didn't take a moment to listen. You judged them on appearances and assumptions. That's not what I've taught you, Nathan." Nathan looked up, a mix of shame and resistance in his gaze. "So, what do you expect me to do? Just trust anyone who comes our way?" Aaron let out a sigh, running a hand through his graying hair. "No. I want you to learn to look past appearances. I want you to understand what integrity and honesty are truly worth." He paused, as if deciding on something. "And I think I know exactly how to make that happen." Nathan raised his eyebrows, a mix of curiosity and nervousness crossing his face. "What are you saying?" "For the next 24 hours, you're going to live on the streets," Aaron announced. "No money, no phone, just the clothes on your back." Nathan's eyes widened in shock. "What? Dad, you can't be serious. I have responsibilities and meetings." "All of that can wait," Aaron interrupted. "This matters more. You need to know what life feels like for those with less and understand what they go through. Only then will you truly develop empathy." Nathan wanted to argue, but something in his father's look told him it was pointless. He knew that when Aaron Warren made up his mind, there was no changing it. Finally, he caved in. "When do I start?" he asked. "Right now," Aaron replied. "Hand over your phone, wallet, and keys." With shaky hands, Nathan passed over his things. It felt like he was stepping off a cliff without a safety net. Just as he headed for the door, Aaron called out one more instruction. "I want you to track down that girl and her dad, and when you do, I want you to really hear them, listen to their story. You might learn more than you think." Nodding stiffly, Nathan left the hotel. The sky was painted in hues of orange and purple as the sun dipped, and the streets buzzed with people wrapping up their day or heading out for the night. For the first time, Nathan felt totally alone and exposed. He didn't know where to go or what to do. The world of luxury he'd always known now felt like a distant dream. Wandering without purpose, his mind drifted back to the girl and her father. Where would they be? How did they get by every day? And above all, how did they hold on to their dignity through it all? With a deep sigh, he set off down the city streets, unknowingly about to experience a 24-hour journey that would change his life forever. As night descended, a chill settled over the city, and Nathan shivered. It had only been a few hours since he'd left the hotel, but he felt as though he'd been walking aimlessly for days. His feet, unused to the pounding pavement, throbbed. As he continued down the streets, he noticed things he'd always overlooked. People scavenging through dumpsters, others curled up in doorways trying to escape the cold. Every face was a testament to hardship and endurance. Hunger gnawed at him, and the scent of food drifting from nearby restaurants felt like a cruel tease. Desperate, he thought of asking a restaurant owner for a meal, promising to pay later. But one look at his rumpled clothes and worn-out look, and the manager asked him to leave. At that moment, Nathan grasped what it meant to be invisible to society. Days earlier, the same people who would have shown him respect now met his eyes with suspicion or outright ignored him. As the night wore on, the chill in the air grew sharper. Nathan wandered into a nearby park and settled onto a bench. That's where he met Kathleen, an older woman who had been living on the streets for years. "First night out here?" she asked, giving him a weary but warm smile. Nathan nodded, surprised that anyone was even talking to him. "How did you know?" he asked. "Your eyes," she answered. "They still have that look, like you can't quite believe this is happening to you." Kathleen handed him a piece of stale bread she had found earlier. Just hours before, Nathan might have turned it down, but now he took it gratefully. As they ate, Kathleen shared her story with him. She had once been a successful executive until bad choices and an addiction took everything away. "It's not the hunger or the cold that's the hardest," Kathleen said softly. "It's the way people look at you. Or worse, don't look at you at all. You become invisible." Her words hit Nathan deeply. He thought back to how he had treated Diana and her father, and a wave of guilt washed over him. As the night went on, Nathan met others with stories of their own. There was Wayne, a veteran battling post-traumatic stress, and Mary, a young woman who had escaped an abusive household. Each story chipped away at his assumptions, shaking up the world he thought he knew. But it was Bobby who left the biggest impression on him. Bobby was a man in his 50s, with kind eyes and rough hands. Nathan found him sharing a sandwich with his young son. "My wife's sick," Bobby explained when Nathan approached. "She needs medicine we can't afford, so I give my food to my boy. As long as he's okay, I can manage." Those words reminded Nathan of Diana and her dad. The situation hit close to home. Here was another father putting everything on the line for his child, staying dignified despite his struggles. "How do you do it?" Nathan asked in a hushed tone. "How do you hold on to hope?" Bobby smiled, pulling his son close. "Because every day's a new chance, and as long as I have my family, I've got a reason to keep going. And because I believe that kindness ultimately triumphs." That night, huddled against a bench in the park, Nathan couldn't find sleep. His mind was flooded with thoughts and emotions he hadn't let himself feel before. He remembered all the times he'd judged people without understanding their situations, how he'd lived without realizing his own privilege, and most of all, he thought of Diana and her father, their honesty and resilience in the face of hardship. Now, he truly understood the worth of their actions and the wrong in how he had treated them. As the sky began to lighten, signaling the start of a new day, Nathan made a decision. He would not only seek out Diana and her father to apologize, but he would also do everything within his power to help them. And not just them, but everyone he'd crossed paths with that night. With this new purpose, he rose, ready to embrace the day and the lessons it held. Nathan was beginning to change, and with that shift, there was a fresh hope for those around him. His once pristine clothes were now rumpled and dirtied. His stomach rumbled with hunger, and his whole body ached from the rough night spent on the park's hard benches. Yet, a determination gleamed in his eyes that hadn't been there the day before. As he walked the familiar streets in search of Diana and her father, he saw the city through a new lens. The extravagant shop windows he used to admire now looked garish and excessive. The people hurrying past those sleeping on the streets made him feel an uncomfortable kinship with his old self. On one of these walks, Nathan encountered a situation that would turn his day around. On a busy corner, he noticed a young woman struggling to juggle several shopping bags and two small children. Without a second thought, Nathan stepped forward to help. "Here, let me give you a hand," he offered, reaching for the bags. At first, the woman eyed him warily, but something in his earnest expression reassured her, and she gratefully handed him a few bags. As they walked, the woman, who introduced herself as Jessica, began to open up. She shared that she was a single mum, working 2 jobs to support her kids. Every day was a test, but she stayed hopeful for their sake. "Some days I feel like throwing in the towel," Jessica admitted, her voice quivering. "But then I look at my kids, and I know I have to keep pushing. They deserve a chance at something better." Her words struck a chord with Nathan. He thought about his father, how he had built his success from nothing, how many obstacles he had overcome, and the sacrifices he'd made. When they arrived at Jessica's modest apartment, Nathan offered to help her carry the bags inside. As Nathan observed the youngest child limping slightly, he felt a pang of concern. "Is he all right?" he asked, gesturing toward the boy. Jessica took a deep breath and explained, "He needs surgery, but I just can't afford it. Every dollar I make goes straight to groceries and rent." The weight of her words hit Nathan hard. Here was a mother doing everything to provide for her kids, facing hardships he could hardly comprehend, yet holding on to her hope and dignity. Before he left, He asked if she knew a young girl named Diana and her dad. To his surprise, Jessica nodded, saying, "I've seen them around the neighborhood. They're good people." She added, "The other day, Diana's father shared his last bit of bread with my son when we had nothing. They have so much kindness, despite everything." Those words struck a deep chord within Nathan. Fighting back tears, he replied with a tight voice, "Thank you, Jessica. You've done more for me than you realize." Leaving the apartment, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Not only was he determined to find Diana and her father to make things right, but he knew he had to help Jessica and her family too. Nathan spent hours searching, asking every homeless person he encountered if they knew where Diana and her father might be. Some brushed him off, others eyed him suspiciously, but a few, sensing his genuine intentions, tried to help. Just as the sun was setting, he caught a break. An older man selling newspapers at a street corner told him he'd seen a man and girl matching the description heading toward an old, abandoned building on the city's edge. With his heart pounding, Nathan made his way there. As he approached, the sky was washed in deep oranges and purples, the last light of the day casting shadows over the rundown structure. Broken windows and graffiti-stained walls greeted him as he entered. "Hello?" he called out, his voice echoing in the empty halls. "Diana, sir?" Silence followed, and then a faint sound came from one of the back rooms. He moved forward cautiously, and there, tucked into a corner, he spotted Diana and her dad. Peter immediately rose to his feet, stepping protectively in front of Diana. His eyes widened, surprise flashing across his face as he recognized Nathan. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice carrying a blend of confusion and suspicion. Nathan, feeling his heart pounding, took another step closer. "I'm here to apologize," he said, his voice faltering. "What I did to you, the way I treated you, it was wrong. Really wrong." Diana peeked out from behind her father, her big eyes filled with curiosity and a flicker of hope. Nathan continued, his words spilling out quickly. "I've been out on the street for the last 24 hours. I saw things, experienced things I never thought I would, and it opened my eyes. I see now how wrong I was. About you, about everything." Peter and Diana exchanged a look of surprise. "Why did you do that?" Diana asked, her voice gentle yet steady. Nathan gave a sad smile. "I needed a wake-up call, and let me tell you, I got it." He shared his experience, talking about the people he'd met and how his perspective had shifted entirely. With each word, Peter and Diana could sense the change in him, the true humility and regret in his gaze. "What you did, Diana," Nathan said, turning to her, "returning that card when you could have kept it, was amazing. You have more integrity and strength than I ever had." Diana, moved by the sincerity in his voice, stepped forward. "We all make mistakes," she said, with a maturity beyond her years. "The important thing is that we learn from them." Peter, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke up. "We appreciate your apology," he said, his tone calm. "But what are you planning to do now?" Nathan took a steady breath. "I want to help," he replied firmly. "Not just you, but everyone I crossed paths with these past 24 hours. I've spent my life in a bubble, and now I want to use my privilege to make a difference." Peter studied him closely, as if weighing the sincerity behind his words. Finally, he gave a slight nod. "The real proof of your change will be in what you do next, not what you say." "I know," Nathan answered, determination in his voice, "and I'm ready to show it." Just then, his phone, which his father had returned to him earlier that morning, started ringing. It was Aaron Warren. On the other end of the line, Nathan's father spoke up. "It's time for you to come back. Have you learned anything?" Nathan glanced over at Diana and Peter, a determined look filling his eyes. "Yes, Dad," he answered confidently. "I've learned a lot, and there's something I need your help with." As Nathan shared his plan, Diana and Peter exchanged a hopeful look, their spirits lifting just a bit. Across the table, surrounded by an air of discomfort amidst the opulence, sat Diana and Peter, fidgeting slightly. Aaron's voice filled the room, steady and commanding. "Nathan has shared his experiences and told me all about you. I have to admit, I'm impressed by your openness and regretful about the way you were treated initially." Peter acknowledged the words with a silent nod. Meanwhile, Diana was taking in everything around her, her wide eyes filled with wonder, like she'd stepped into another world. "Dad," Nathan leaned in, voice full of resolve. "I've promised to help them, and not just them, but everyone I met during my time out there. I need your backing to make this real." Aaron observed his son with a blend of pride and measured caution. "What exactly are you thinking?" he asked. Nathan took a breath and began to detail his vision: a program for affordable housing, job training centers, and access to free healthcare for those who needed it. With each sentence, his determination grew stronger. "And I want Peter and Diana to play a central role in this," he concluded. "No one understands these people's needs better than those who've lived that life." As Nathan finished, silence filled the room. Peter looked a bit overwhelmed, while Diana's eyes shone with excitement. Aaron leaned back thoughtfully, watching his son closely. "It's a big idea," he finally said, "and costly." "I know," Nathan replied without a pause, "but we have the resources to make it happen, and it's the right thing to do." Aaron looked from Nathan to Peter and Diana. "What do you think?" he asked. Peter, who'd stayed quiet until then, cleared his throat. "It's more than we could have ever dreamed of," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "But if you can really make this happen, it would change so many lives." Diana, unable to hold back her excitement, chimed in. "We could help Jessica and her kids, and Kathleen, and Bobby, and everyone else." Aaron gave a warm smile as he watched the girl's excitement light up her face. Then, shifting his focus back to Nathan, he spoke gently. "You've changed, son." His tone carried a sense of admiration. "I see a depth in you now, a maturity and kindness that wasn't there before." Nathan nodded, feeling the weight of his father's words settle on him. "I've learned a lot recently," he admitted, "and I want to keep growing, keep learning." Aaron stood, his mind made up. "All right," he announced firmly. "We'll go forward with this, but there's one condition." The room grew silent with anticipation. "I want you, Nathan, to head this project," he continued. "You'll be responsible for ensuring it's done right and that it makes a real difference for those who need it." Excitement and nervousness swirled within Nathan, but he met his father's gaze and nodded with confidence. "I'll do it, Dad. I won't let you down." Diana, overcome with joy, leaped from her seat and wrapped her arms around Nathan. "Thank you. Thank you," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. Peter, eyes glistening with emotion, reached for Aaron's hand. "I can't even express how grateful I am," he said, his voice cracking. Aaron grinned. "Save the thanks for later," he replied. "There's plenty of work ahead." And so, in that very boardroom, a mission was set in motion, one that would transform not only Diana and Peter's lives, but also those of hundreds across the city. It marked the start of a redemption path for Nathan, and a beacon of hope for those who had lost faith in people. As they dove into planning, Diana glanced out at the cityscape beyond the windows. For the first time in what felt like ages, she saw a hopeful future. not just for herself and her dad, but for everyone who had been pushed aside. The sunlight poured in, as if nature itself was shining on this new beginning, kindling a spark of hope that would reach even the darkest parts of the city. The following days were packed with effort and energy. The project, named Hearts Without Homes by Diana, quickly took shape. Nathan kept his promise, fully immersing himself in the work. Long days were spent meeting with experts in urban planning, social work, and community outreach. Every evening, he came home weary, but with a sense of purpose he'd never known. Peter, meanwhile, was invaluable as an advisor, bringing insights from his time on the streets that no consultant could provide. And Diana, with her boundless energy and caring spirit, became the heartbeat of the project. She toured neighborhoods where new homes were underway, chatting with the families set to benefit, always ready with a kind word or encouragement. One afternoon, while overseeing the construction of the first community center, Nathan walked over to Peter. "How's it going?" he asked, genuinely interested in Peter's perspective. Peter took a moment, glancing around at the bustling site, watching the joy on the faces of the volunteers hard at work. "It's incredible," he replied, voice thick with emotion. "I never thought I'd see something like this in my lifetime." Nathan nodded, feeling a mix of pride and humility swelling up. "All this started because of you and Diana," he said. "Your honesty, your commitment, that's what got this going." Just then, Diana came running up, her eyes full of excitement. "Dad, Nathan, come see." She led them over to a section of the building where a group of kids was painting a mural. The artwork depicted a sunrise over the city, with people helping each other in beautiful harmony. Nathan muttered, moved by the scene. "It's stunning." "This is more than just putting up walls," Peter added, patting Nathan's shoulder. "You're building hope." As they admired the mural, Jessica, a single mom whom Nathan had met back when he was struggling on the streets, walked over. Dressed in her nurse's uniform, she beamed with pride. "I just wanted to thank you," she said, her eyes welling up. "Because of the training program, I earned my nursing license, and my son, his surgery is set for next week." Diana leaped with joy and hugged Jessica, while Nathan and Peter shared a satisfied glance. This was the change they had been working toward, but it wasn't all smooth sailing. As the project expanded, so did the obstacles. There were issues with permits, complaints from neighbors who didn't want affordable housing in their community, and even resistance from local politicians who saw the project as a threat to their own agendas. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day of dealing with local red tape, Nathan found himself sitting in his father's office, feeling drained. "I'm not sure I can do this, Dad," he confessed. "There are just so many hurdles, so much pushback." Aaron gazed at his son, his face a mix of pride and understanding. "Nathan," he began gently, "real change isn't simple. There will always be people who hesitate, who fear the unknown. But don't lose sight of why you started this." Nathan took a deep breath, remembering all the lives the project had touched so far. "You're right," he replied, feeling his resolve strengthen. "I can't turn back now." Aaron placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "And you're not doing it alone," he reminded him. "I'm proud of you, Nathan. You've grown more in these past weeks than I could have imagined." Those words meant more to Nathan than his father could have realized. With fresh energy, Nathan threw himself back into his work, determined to tackle each challenge. As the months went on, the Hearts Without Homes project started to make a real impact. The first affordable housing complex was nearly complete. The community center buzzed with activity, providing jobs and skill-building programs that had already helped dozens. Diana, who now attended school regularly with the project's help, had become a bit of a mascot for the whole team. Her boundless enthusiasm and natural kindness were infectious, inspiring everyone around her. One afternoon, as Diana helped organize a job fair at the community center, she noticed an older man sitting alone in a corner, looking downcast. Without a second thought, she walked up to him. "Hi," she said warmly, smiling at him. "I'm Diana. Is everything okay?" She showed genuine concern, which surprised the man. I don't know," he admitted quietly. "I've been job hunting for months, but no one's looking to hire someone my age." Diana's face grew thoughtful, then lit up with a bright idea. "Come with me," she said, grabbing his hand and leading him over to Nathan, who was talking with some potential employers. "Nathan," she said, interrupting with a spark of urgency in her voice. "This gentleman here needs a chance. He's older, but I'm sure he's got valuable experience. Isn't there something we could find for him?" Nathan, caught off guard by Diana's bold interruption, but inspired by her determination, turned to the man with curiosity. "What's your name, sir?" he asked kindly. "Arthur," the man replied, straightening a bit. "I was a carpenter for 40 years, before I lost everything." Nathan's eyes sparkled with inspiration. "Arthur, have you ever thought about teaching your skills to others?" they asked, looking for instructors for the training sessions. A hopeful spark lit up Arthur's face. "Are you serious? I'd love to do that." And with Diana's support, another person's life found a new direction. Arthur not only gained a renewed sense of purpose, but his expertise became a vital asset to the project. Yet, the journey wasn't without its setbacks. One morning, Peter arrived at Nathan's office, concern written all over his face. "There's been graffiti on the new housing," he said, holding out his phone to show the images. "Messages saying they don't want homeless people here." Frustration and anger surged through Nathan as he processed the words. After all the effort they had poured into the community, this was the response they got. But before Nathan could react, Diana, who had overheard, offered a solution. "Why don't we host a community painting day?" she suggested. "Invite everyone in the neighborhood, old and new, to come and paint over those messages together. It'll give them a chance to meet each other, maybe see things differently." Peter and Nathan exchanged glances, marveling once again at her insight. "That's a fantastic idea," Nathan replied. And Diana's plan proved a huge success. The painting day blossomed into a full-blown community event, complete with music, food, and most importantly, meaningful conversations. Neighbors, who had once looked at each other with suspicion, were now sharing stories and laughter as they painted side by side. By the end of the day, the walls were covered in beautiful murals that symbolized the unity and diversity of the neighborhood. Driving home that night, Nathan thought about the transformation in his own life over the past few months. Just recently, his biggest concerns had been about what suit to wear or which new car to buy. He now felt truly alive and motivated by a goal much greater than himself. He thought about Diana, Peter, his father's unwavering support, and the lives they were changing one by one. As he parked his car, Nathan made a decision. Tomorrow, he'd talk to his father about taking the project further. It was time to expand beyond this city. There were so many more lives they could impact. With a renewed sense of determination, Nathan headed into his apartment, fully aware of the challenges ahead. But for the first time, he felt genuinely ready to face them. What had started as a local project had blossomed into a national movement for social change. Together, Nathan, Peter, and Diana traveled, sharing their journey and helping other communities adopt similar programs, one city at a time. Yet, destiny had another twist planned for this remarkable family. One afternoon, while Nathan was going over documents in his office, he received an unexpected phone call. It was from a private investigator Aaron Warren had hired months before. "Mr. Warren," the voice on the line said, "we've uncovered information about Diana's biological parents." Nathan felt his heart skip a beat. Since they'd started working closely with Peter and Diana, Aaron had quietly initiated a search into the girl's origins, hoping they might connect her with family, if any were still out there. "What did you find?" Nathan asked, his pulse racing. "It's complex, sir," the investigator answered. "It would be best if you came to my office and brought Peter and Diana with you." Later that day, Nathan, Peter, and Diana were all seated in the investigator's office, waiting with equal parts nervousness and curiosity. The investigator cleared his throat, looking particularly at Peter. "What I'm about to tell you may be hard to process," he began. "We've confirmed that Diana is, in fact, Peter's biological daughter." The room fell into a stunned silence. Diana turned to Peter, her eyes wide with disbelief, while Peter looked like he'd just been struck. How is that possible?" he managed to stammer. The investigator explained that 11 years earlier, Peter had briefly married a woman named Betty. Due to financial struggles and her own addiction issues, their relationship fell apart quickly. Betty had left Peter without ever mentioning she was pregnant. She later gave birth to Diana and left her at an orphanage. The investigator went on. Around that time, Peter, already struggling, hit rock bottom with depression and alcoholism. He lost his job, his home, and eventually found himself on the streets. With teary eyes, Diana reached for Peter's hand. "So, you were always my real dad." Overcome with emotion, Peter could only nod, wrapping Diana in a tight embrace. Nathan watched the moment, deeply moved. Somehow, the universe had found a way to reunite this father and daughter in the most unimaginable way. "There's more," the investigator announced, pulling everyone's focus once more. "Betty passed away a few years back, but before she died, she left a letter addressed to Diana at the orphanage. We've managed to recover it." Diana's hands shook as she took the envelope from the investigator. Inside, she found a letter and an old photograph showing a young woman cradling a baby. As Diana began reading the letter aloud, the room grew still under the weight of her words. In her letter, Betty expressed the sorrow she felt for leaving her daughter, explaining the circumstances that drove her to make that heartbreaking choice. She also shared her wish that Diana would one day find the love and happiness she couldn't provide. "You will always be my little miracle," Diana read, her voice catching. "And though I couldn't be the mother you deserved, I hope you find someone who loves you as deeply as I wanted to." With tears streaming down his face, Peter hugged Diana even tighter. "She did," he whispered. "I found you. My girl. And I've loved you from the very beginning, not even knowing you were my own blood." Nathan, sensing this was a profoundly personal moment, quietly excused himself and stepped into the hallway. There, he encountered his father, who had arrived after getting a call from Nathan. "How are they taking it?" Aaron asked, his face full of concern. With damp eyes, Nathan gave a small smile. "It's beautiful, Dad. Life has a strange way of putting things right." Aaron nodded, resting a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder. "Sometimes, the family we choose is the one we were meant to have all along." As father and son waited outside, they reflected on the remarkable journey that had brought everyone to this point. A lost credit card had started a chain of events that not only changed lives, but also brought together a family split apart by fate. Inside the office, Peter and Diana continued their embrace, both overwhelmed by the truth they had uncovered. Their bond, already strengthened by shared experiences, now held an even deeper connection, rooted in blood. And in that modest investigator's office, a new chapter for this extraordinary family started, brimming with love, hope, and the understanding that miracles often appear when we least expect them. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions for Peter and Diana. They spent hours talking, laughing, and shedding tears together as they absorbed the incredible news of their true relationship. Each shared memory and moment they had once lived on the streets now took on an even richer meaning. Nathan stayed by their side, quietly supportive, ensuring both father and daughter had all they needed to adjust to this new chapter in their lives. He noticed how the connection between them, already strong, seemed to grow even deeper, day by day. One morning over breakfast in the apartment provided by the project, Diana looked at her dad with a brightness in her eyes. "Dad," she began, cherishing the word in a new way, "do you think Mum would be proud of us?" Peter, touched by her question, gently held her hand. "I'm sure she would be," he replied warmly. "You've become a remarkable, kind and resilient person, and together, we've made a difference in many lives." Diana smiled, but her gaze turned thoughtful. "Do you think one day we could help other families reconnect, like we did?" Her question sparked an idea in Peter. That afternoon, he met with Nathan to discuss a fresh vision for the Hearts Without Homes initiative. "I want to start a family reunification program," Peter said, his voice full of energy. "How is it possible that so many families are separated because of poverty, addiction, or tough circumstances? If Diana and I found each other, maybe we can help others find their families too." Nathan listened, feeling the excitement of a new direction for their mission. "It's an amazing idea, Peter," he said with a smile. "Let's make it happen." Over the next few weeks, the team worked relentlessly to bring the new program to life. They recruited investigators, social workers, and family counselors, and formed partnerships with orphanages and adoption agencies. Slowly, the Lost Bonds program started taking shape. On the day of the official launch, the community center was filled with hopeful families, social workers, and media representatives eager to hear about the initiative. Diana, wearing a lovely blue dress, joined her father on the podium, her voice steady and clear as she shared their story and how they discovered their family bond. "Our story shows that miracles do happen," Diana said, her voice filled with emotion. "We want to help more families find that miracle. Every person deserves to know where they come from, and every separated family deserves the chance to reconnect." Peter took the microphone next, pride shining in his eyes as he looked at his daughter. "The Lost Bonds program won't just reunite families," he explained. "It will also provide psychological support, legal assistance, and resources to help them stay connected once they're together." The crowd listened intently, many wiping away tears as they felt the impact of this new program. In the crowd, Nathan noticed hopeful faces, people who once seemed to have given up on reuniting with their loved ones. When the presentation concluded, the room burst into applause. Reporters surged forward, eager to ask questions. Families moved in to sign up for the program, and social workers stood ready, offering their support and guidance. In the midst of the activity, Nathan made his way to Peter and Diana. "You did an incredible job," he said, wrapping them both in a hug. "You're bringing hope to so many people." Diana smiled, her eyes glowing with determination. "This is only the start," she replied. "I have a feeling Lost Bonds is going to make a real difference." And she couldn't have been more right. Over the next few months, the program delivered results beyond what anyone had dared to hope. Families separated for years were brought back together. Parents, once struggling with addiction and now in recovery, were granted the chance to reconnect with their children. Siblings torn apart by the adoption system finally reunited. Each success was a testament to their hard work. And for Peter and Diana, each family brought back together was a touching reminder of their own incredible journey. One afternoon, as they sifted through cases in the office, Diana suddenly stopped, her eyes welling up as she looked at her dad. "What's wrong, honey?" Peter asked, concerned. Diana smiled through her tears. "It's just that sometimes I still can't believe you're really my dad," she said. "After everything we went through, it's amazing we found each other." Peter pulled her into a warm hug. "I can hardly believe it either," he admitted. "But every day, I'm so grateful, and I'm thankful we can help others find the same joy." As father and daughter shared this quiet moment, Nathan watched them from the office door, feeling a surge of gratitude and awe. He recalled that day at the hotel when he had looked down on Peter and Diana with suspicion and arrogance, how much he had changed since then, and how they had all grown. The Hearts Without Homes project, and now Lost Bonds, had evolved far beyond typical social services. They became a symbol of the impact of kindness, the resilience within each person, and how a single act of compassion could spark a chain reaction of positive change. That night, as Nathan drove home, he reflected on this incredible journey, from a forgotten credit card to a movement changing lives nationwide, from a self-absorbed young man to someone committed to making the world better. At the heart of it all were Diana and Peter, two resilient souls who had weathered tough times with grace and love, now offering others the chance to rediscover hope in the shadows of hardship. With the city lights glowing around him, Nathan couldn't help but smile. The future was wide open, teeming with potential, and he felt honored to be part of this incredible journey of healing and love. Time raced by, and soon enough, they found themselves at the first anniversary of the Lost Bonds initiative. To mark the occasion, a grand event was planned at the community center, bringing together all the families who had reconnected through the program. The hall was festively adorned with balloons and streamers, buzzing with the laughter and chatter of countless lives changed for the better. Moving through the lively crowd, Nathan, Peter, and Diana greeted families and listened to their stories. In one corner, they spotted Arthur, the former carpenter, now an instructor in the program, happily surrounded by his students as they shared stories about their latest projects. Jessica, the nurse who had once struggled to provide for her kids, now runs the community clinic. Her son, now fully healed after surgery, played joyfully with other children. Watching the scene unfold, Diana's heart swelling with pride. "It's like a dream," she told her father. "Look at all the lives we've impacted." Peter pulled her into a hug, feeling her joy. "And it all started with you, my girl," he said, his voice filled with pride. "Your honesty and kindness sparked all of this." Just then, Aaron Warren took the stage, calling for everyone's attention. The room hushed, all eyes on the man whose support had made it all possible. "A year ago," Aaron began, voice thick with emotion, "my son Nathan shared an idea that, I'll admit, I thought was a bit ambitious at first." Laughter rippled through the crowd. "But that vision, driven by compassion and a commitment to doing good, has turned into something truly wonderful," he said, casting a warm look at Nathan standing nearby. Aaron continued, "Today, we celebrate not only the success of Lost Bonds, but also the countless new beginnings it has inspired." Aaron took a deep breath, scanning the crowd until he caught sight of Diana and Peter and spoke with conviction. "We honor the strength of people and what we can achieve when we come together." He paused, letting his words settle. "And it all began with a single act of integrity. A young girl and her father, who may not have had much, but whose honesty outweighed any riches." Diana felt the warmth of tears as Peter wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. "So today," Aaron went on, "I'm proud to announce that the Warren Foundation will be expanding these programs nationwide. We envision every city having its own safe havens for those without homes and lost connections. We believe that everyone deserves a place to call home, a family, and a chance. Applause erupted, filling the room with hope and excitement. Overcome with emotion, Nathan walked up to the stage and embraced his father. Then, he extended a hand toward Diana and Peter, inviting them to join. On stage, two families united in a heartfelt embrace, Aaron and Nathan, whose relationship had grown through their journey together, and Peter and Diana, whose bond had not only endured hardships, but had been revealed as something deeply profound and unconditional. As the crowd cheered, Diana looked around, soaking in the joy radiating from every face. She remembered that distant day when she found a lost credit card on the street, a moment that felt like a lifetime ago. Who could have guessed that this small act of honesty would lead to so much? "Thank you," she murmured softly. Though her words were lost in the celebratory noise, her gratitude reached out to the universe, to destiny, to whatever forces had led to this extraordinary series of events. As the celebration carried on, with laughter, music, and the smiles of countless reunited families, Diana felt a sense of purpose. There was still so much more she wanted to do, more lives to touch. But as she looked at Peter, at Nathan and Aaron, she knew that together they could overcome anything. Love, compassion, and honesty were powerful, unstoppable forces. In that moment, Diana made a silent vow to keep fighting, to keep helping, to keep loving. She now understood that even the smallest acts could ripple out, bringing change to the world. Her journey, which had started on the cold streets of an unfeeling city, had grown into something far bigger. Her story was now touching lives across the country, and in each life transformed, each family reunited, each heart rekindled with hope, her legacy would endure. As light flooded the room and music swelled, Diana closed her eyes and smiled. The future was wide open, brimming with endless possibilities, and she was ready to embrace it. With love guiding her and a fierce spirit within,